Welcome to Be Renewed. This show shares tips and inspiration for mental wellness, but it's not a substitute for professional care. If you need help, please reach out to a licensed professional. You may submit your question for our show by calling, texting, or WhatsApping 671-686-9999. Your questions will be anonymous. We will not use your name to protect your identity. Now, here's your host for Be Renewed, mental health provider Shion Shironishi.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Be Renewed. And today, we're talking about a topic that one of our listeners specifically actually requested. So thank you for sending that in. And today, we're going to be focusing on post-traumatic stress disorder, or for short, PTSD. You know, before I get started, I just want to remind you that this show is for you. I want to provide a healing from you. I want to help you to understand mental health, your mental health better. So you can always send your questions, share your thoughts, your requests of topics that you want to know more about to us, and I'd love to talk about those things. And your experiences and concerns help shape what we talk about here, so don't hesitate to reach out. We want to hear from you. And so let's just start right now with the basic of what is PTSD. And PTSD is a mental health condition that can develop after experiencing a traumatic and actually not just experiencing, but witnessing a traumatic event. And trauma could be anything. A lot of people, when they hear PTSD, they think of someone that went to combat, someone in the military. But it could be car accident. It could be a natural disaster. It could be a violent attack they experienced from someone. It could be, ongoing situation of maybe an abuse. An abuse could be physical. It could be emotional, and it could be sexual, and obviously neglect. That's one that we forget often. But these are some traumas that can cause PTSD. I mean, there's so many other ones out there. And I know the person that messaged me specifically was asking me about battered woman syndrome. The short was BWS. But this is a type of PTSD, and it comes from a situation by repeated abuse. And you might wonder, why would anyone stay in an abusive relationship? But the trauma actually causes change in the brain. And so if anyone, and specifically for this condition for women that ends up staying in an abusive relationship, they feel fearful and they're feeling helpless. And they have a codependency going on with their, usually, their loved one. And they call it trauma bonding, and they get a little bit emotionally attached. And that's why there's a repeat abusive action that takes place, and that person end up staying in that relationship, which that's where the BDS comes from. And how does BDS look like? Depression, hypervigilance, self-blame, or isolation. And these are common things that occur to many women. It's a really sad situation. And what we want to do is, BWS, or the main topic we're talking about is PTSD. Anyone that's been through PTSD, the first thing to do is we need to show compassion. Compassion to yourself, and to show compassion if you know someone that has PTSD, to show them love and understanding and comfort. That's what they need the most. We need to find comfort, and we need to actually be easy on ourselves, because when we're experiencing PTSD, I find that a lot of my patients are really hard on themselves, and you're going to find out some symptoms that you might be experiencing as a PTSD. But with these symptoms going on, and it's affecting your life, it's affecting your relationships, affecting your work, you start to blame yourself. And you start to say, what is wrong with you? What's wrong with me? And I can't do anything right. And that's why I start with the concept of let's show compassion to ourselves. Let's be easy on ourselves and to understand what is this trauma, what is PTSD, and how can we overcome it, especially through God. And so, trauma leaves a deep imprint on both the mind and the body. And the body remembers even when the mind wants to forget it. And so how do you know if you might have PTSD? Well, to explain this, we need to understand what is going on in the body and how does the body remember some traumatic experience you've experienced in the past. And so there are several signs to watch out for, which generally fall into 4 categories. Okay, these are some symptoms that you might be experiencing PTSD. And so the first one is intrusive memories. You might have flashbacks, nightmares, or unwanted memories that feel as though the trauma is happening again. Okay, so intrusive memories. Second one, avoidance. You're avoiding places, people, or situations that remind you of the trauma or try to block out thoughts and feelings connected to it. And so avoidance. The third one, negative changes in thinking and mood. So this can look like persistent sadness, hopelessness, guilt, shame, or emotional numbness. And you might feel disconnected from loved ones, family, friends, or lose interest in things that used to bring you joy, like hobbies, sports they used to play. And the fourth one, changes in physical and emotional reactions. And so this includes being easily startled, feeling constantly on edge, you're hypervigilant, trouble sleeping, irritable, this is a huge one, or sudden anger outburst. And, if these symptoms last more than a month and significantly affects your daily life, it may be a sign of PTSD. And so it's important to know having PTSD doesn't mean that you are weak. You are hopeless. Just because you have these signs and symptoms, again, I just like to repeat this to you guys. Just because you just heard me talk about these symptoms and you're like, wow, I have PTSD. What's wrong with me? And I mentioned one of the symptoms being sudden anger outbursts, irritable. And this is a common thing I hear from my patients where my family complains about me. I get angry and I have anger outbursts towards them. And what's wrong with me? I'm a bad husband. I'm a bad father. And, we need to stop trying to make ourselves feel down. We need to just understand what's going on in our brain, in our body, and it's a natural reaction that you would have from traumas. And so we need to understand this is a process that your mind and body will go through if you do experience trauma. But this is why we need to have professional help so that we can learn how to overcome it. Your body and your mind can overcome PTSD with professional help, with professional guidance. And so we want to now take a look at what is happening in the brain when someone has PTSD. So understanding this helps us to see that PTSD is not just all in your head. It's a real physiological response. And so the first part of the brain we are going to talk about is the amygdala. It's the fear center. So this part of the brain is responsible for detecting danger. In someone with PTSD, the amygdala becomes overly active, and it constantly signals, be afraid, be alert, watch out, danger. And even when, there's no current danger. And so, how it works is if you are let's say you're in Africa and you're walking through the safari and you run into a lion, amygdala will fire up and it will tell you, danger, watch out, you're gonna die, that lion's gonna kill you. And it's something that is helpful. You want this amygdala to work. It's almost like a fire alarm in your room, and it's alarming that, hey, there's something dangerous going on. We need to either fight or flight. You guys probably heard that, right? Fight or flight, and you got to do something about, or else you might die. And so what happens is, after that traumatic experience, even if there's no more danger, your amygdala might be still going. It might be still active, and it's the reaction isn't stopping. And so that's why in scenarios like those veterans that went to combat and they came back home, they still have this amygdala alerting them, danger, watch out. And you need to keep looking behind your back to make sure no one's out to get you. And that's what's going on. The next part of the brain that gets affected is the hippocampus, and this is the memory and context center. So this part of the brain helps us to distinguish the past events from the past. Okay, so when it's affected by the trauma, the brain can't clearly separate what happened before from what is happening now. And so this is why flashbacks can feel so vivid and real. So you can't tell the difference between what is the past event and what is happening right now. And so this is what happens when this part of the brain, the memory and context center, is affected by the trauma. And the last part is the prefrontal cortex. And this is the decision-making center. And this part of the brain helps us to regulate emotions, make thoughtful decisions, you make logical decisions, and it controls your impulses. In PTSD, the prefrontal cortex may be underactive and leaving someone feeling out of control, unable to calm down, or unable to make rational choices in moments of stress. And so your logic's not working, and it's almost like because of your prefrontal cortex is decreased, the function's decreased, now your emotions more reactive, and you're going by your emotions rather than logic. And so you see how PTSD is affecting our brain. It's definitely wiring us in certain way because these parts of our brain is being affected by trauma. And so we can't just say he's going crazy, or they're just, something's wrong with them. We gotta really try to, if you have someone that that has PTSD, we need to help them understand this is what's going on in your brain. This is what's happening. And even if you're the one that's going through PTSD, you need to understand. And instead just saying that I'm going crazy, something's wrong with me, there's an explanation what's happening in your brain. And it's so powerful when you can understand this, because now you know that it's the amygdala, it's your prefrontal cortex, all these things are involved. And now you kind of start seeing, what can I do to help my brain to calm down and to be able to work properly? And we want to see the simple way I want to help you guys today, and we're going to talk more about it in this show, is how to see things right now, the reality, and to get away from the false reality from your trauma. So when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about that.
You're listening to Be Renewed with Shion Shironishi. Your questions are welcome at 671-686-9999. The show continues in just a moment, so stay with us.
The Saipan Seventh-day Adventist Clinic offers outstanding dental care in the CNMI. Dental services include dental hygiene and general dentistry. We also offer root canals, implants, wisdom tooth extractions, and dental laboratory services. The clinic is open Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Friday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Our friendly staff are always ready to help you. For an appointment, please call 670-234-6323.
Hey there, and welcome back to Be Renewed. Together, we're exploring ways to renew your mind, strengthen your heart, and live more fully every day. We'd love to know if you have a comment or question at 671-686-9999. Here's your host, Shion Shironishi.
So we're going to talk about right now this concept called grounding technique. And we left off saying that we want to work on coming back to the reality rather than living in the past and living in the past traumas. And so we want to use grounding technique to help regulate the nervous system. Our nervous system is reacting to some of the parts of the brain that gets affected by the trauma that we just talked about. And these grounding technique helps us to focus back to the reality, focus back to your body right now. And so one of the first the grounding technique that often I teach is breathing technique. That one is very commonly used. And so what happens is you breathe in for 4 seconds and you hold that breath for a bit and then you release it for 4 seconds. And you repeat that a few times, and that actually triggers what we call the parasympathetic nerve. It helps you to calm your nervous system and to be able to relax your anxiety, your stress, and just to say, okay, let's come back to the now rather than being flashbacks and hypervigilant about your past trauma. Some of the other ones that people use is one called 5-4-3-2-1 body scan. So what you do is you notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, and 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This is very practical for flashback or dissociation. Again, you're using your senses to come back to the now. I don't know that often even your senses gets distorted by your past traumas, and you start to smell things that you smell from that trauma or hear things that's from your past trauma. And so if you just focus on the now and what you can see, touch, and hear, that helps you to bring you back to the reality. The other one is touch and texture. You hold a textured object like a stone or stress ball or fabric, and you focus on that sensation in your hand, and that also helps to ground. And so the other one is cold or warm sensation. Now, I like this one. I was never diagnosed with PTSD, but I had something similar, is anxiety. And just a side note, PTSD is in the family of anxiety, but I did struggle with anxiety disorder. And what often I would use is this cold sensation. So I'll splash cold water on my face whenever I was starting to feel like I was getting anxiety attack or panic attack. But there's other ways. Warm sensation can be helpful too. I don't know how helpful that is in Guam because it's already hot here, but it could be, maybe. Some people like to use warm mug to hold a warm mug to come back to the reality or wrap themselves in a blanket. So the temperature shift really helps with the here and now, and it signals the here and now to your nervous system. Another one you could do is listen to music or nature sounds. Focus more on, I would say, music that's instrumental, and that's helpful also. And then some other people use aromatherapy, so you get an essential oil and you smell it. And sometimes you could use fresh herbs. That's also helpful. And just sight anchoring. Maybe you're in some room and you start feeling this PTSD symptoms. You just pick an object in a room, study it carefully, name the shape, name the color, name the texture, and just just name these things and it can help you to be grounded. And so one of the biggest tip though with these grounding techniques, yes, try them all. You got to try them all. And so the biggest tip is try these things before the moment comes when your PTSD is exacerbating. You want to choose what is something that you think will work for you. Practice it. Practice it daily. And the more that you do, it will be more effective during your flashbacks or dissociation. Don't think, okay, I'll choose one and I'll try it when those episodes occur. You got to really practice it beforehand and see what's something that you know and realistically that you can do at those moments. And, mix physical and cognitive. You don't want to just focus on one thing. You want to combine movements with sensory awareness, and it is more powerful if you do that. And so, and the other one is, for me, the biggest thing, the tip for you is prayer. Prayer is a big thing for me that helps me to ground and to pray to God, reminding yourself that God is there. God can direct your mind and help you to come back to the reality. That's very helpful also. And make a place that is safe for you, a safe space. This place is somewhere that if you go, you're just going to feel safe. For me, that was nature. If I ever felt like my anxiety was overly active and I couldn't control it, I would drive to the beach or the woods and just walk a little bit, take a deep breath of fresh air, and that made me feel safe. And this could be anything. It could be your room. It could be your office. It could be your closet. Just choose a place that you could go if you're really reacting to PTSD symptoms and you need a place to go that's safe for you. And so, a lot of experts, psychologists and trauma experts have really helped us understand PTSD and how to heal from it. And one of the things that we want to understand is, in the book, The Body Keeps a Score, it teaches us that trauma is stored in the body. And it's not just memory, but it can be attention, it could be chronic pain, it could be disrupted sleep, heightened stress. The body remembers what the mind may try to forget. And so, one of the things that the experts say is it's so important to talk about the trauma you've been through. See, your body keeps the score, it holds it in, and now it becomes other symptoms. And to prevent that, we really need to talk about it. We really need to share what has happened. And I recommend speaking to a professional, someone that is safe, someone that you could trust, and that they could give you a good counseling and guide you to the right direction, which usually the professional is a better option. If you really need to talk to someone, just talk to someone that you could trust. If you're married, to your spouse. If you have a best friend that you could trust, a pastor. And so, there's a documentary called This Might Hurt. And what this documentary explores the world of chronic pain and the mind-body connection. And it follows individuals who have struggled for years with, severe pain and that conventional medicine could not fully resolve. And, as they follow through these patients, they saw that they were struggling with these chronic pain because they were holding on to a trauma that was occurring. And instead of, strictly relying on medical interventions or surgeries, the film highlights therapeutic approaches that incorporate neuroscience, stress reduction, and emotional processing. And viewers see, when you watch this, the viewers could see how unresolved trauma, fear, and stress manifests as a physical pain in the body. And a concept supported by experts saying that psychosomatic medicine is something that's necessary to understand to help these type of patients. And so an example will be one patient was struggling with stomach issues and conducted several surgeries without success. And she found out through the program that her pain stemmed from a childhood trauma, and she needed to heal from that. And after resolving her past trauma, her stomach issue actually resolved, and she was able to go back to work. And yeah, and I forgot to mention that, but she couldn't work. She had to quit her job and was bedridden because of the stomach problem, but she was able to go back to work. Another young man had pain all over his body. No conventional medicine was able to resolve it, but he found out about the program, and that his pain, he found out also that it stemmed from a childhood trauma, actually seeing one of his best friend die. And after that program, he was able to not feel the pain anymore. So, this documentary really does show that we need to confront the inner wounds that we got from our past trauma and have a meaningful recovery. And we need to understand that this is all deeply connected together, and not just to say, chronic pain separate, all this could be stemming from your trauma. And this whole point that I'm making here is we hold on to so much, and we hold on to it so much and we don't share it, that it ends up just, it's almost like you're holding on to a water hose and it's turned on and you're squeezing it so hard. That hose is going to eventually explode. And us having symptoms like a chronic pain, or sometimes it might be like an autoimmune disease, it could be headaches or anything. These things could be is that you're holding on to so much that your body is keeping score, and we need to release it. We really need to release it. And the best thing for releasing it is God. God actually says, hey, give me your burdens. Whatever you're feeling, whatever you're experiencing, that pain and suffering, I want to carry it for you. And that's something that it's hard for us to do, because maybe we're having a hard time trusting people, and especially trusting God. But I could definitely tell you that we can trust God. I went through, in a sense, trauma. Again, I've never been diagnosed with PTSD, but in a sense, I've been through trauma, and I had to really go to God, because I was at the ends where I was just like, I want to end my life. And when I went to God and released everything to Him and said, Lord, please help me. I can't do this. I can't handle this on my own. God really brought peace into my life, and He pointed me to the right person to work with, a Christian counselor, and she really helped me to express what I've been through, to guide me through my emotions and my thoughts, and everything. When everything just went out, that sense of peace just came upon me, and that's when healing started. And I see this every single day. I have people that come in and has PTSD, traumas, and, seeing how after they talk about what has happened to them, the immediate relief that you see on their face, that itself is healing, to just letting it out, not holding it in. And our brain is crying out for us to do that. When the amygdala is being overly active, and, our emotions of fear is so high. It's almost like this. When you have a fever, you have a headache, you don't just leave it. You got to do something about it. You got to hydrate more, or maybe you might go see a doctor to find out what's going on. Same way with these emotion symptoms, the PTSD symptom. It's a way the brain's telling us, hey, there's something going on inside and we can't keep going like this. We need help. Let's go get help. Let's do something about this to experience healing. And so don't ignore these symptoms. Don't think like you could just push it away. We need to deal with it and to handle it and express it. And so when we come back, we'll learn more about what the Bible says and how we can learn to overcome and heal from our trauma.
This is Be Renewed, tips and inspiration for mental wellness. We're taking a quick break, but there's more encouragement to come, so stay with us. Got a question? Call, text, or WhatsApp us at 671-686-9999. We will not use your name on the show. Need peace of mind? Struggling with relationships? Want to grow your faith? Join mental health care provider Shion Shironishi for Be Renewed, a faith-inspired mental wellness radio show dedicated to helping you refresh your mind, strengthen your relationships, and live a life full of purpose and peace. Each episode offers practical strategies, inspiring stories, and actionable insights. Shion will guide you in transforming your thoughts, emotions, and daily habits. You can anonymously call, text, or WhatsApp your questions, and we'll submit your questions for the show. We will not use your name to protect your privacy. Reach out at 671-686-9999. That's 671-686-9999. Whether you're looking to improve your mental health, navigate life's challenges, or grow spiritually, Be Renewed provides encouragement and tools to help you live your best life. Tune in Mondays from 5 to 6 p.m. for Be Renewed with Shion Shironishi. That's 5 to 6 p.m. Mondays right here on Joy FM. Now back to Be Renewed, the show that helps you refresh your mind, strengthen your relationships, and live with purpose. Have a question? Call, text, or WhatsApp your anonymous question at 671-686-9999. Here's your host, Shion Shironishi.
All right, so we're back now, and we're going to talk about how the Bible gives us profound insight into how we can process and heal from trauma. And last thing I said before the commercial, I said it's so important to express, so important to let out the trauma that you went through and to share about it, to get help. And you know, the Bible actually says this. In Psalm 62 verse 8 says, "Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us." And we see in the Bible characters like David, Job, Jeremiah, and many others. They actually did this. They pour out their hearts to God. They expressed their emotions. They didn't hide anything. And that brought healing, and that also brought more faith into their life. And so we want to follow these steps and follow the instruction that God has given to us, saying, hey, pour out your heart to me. And God wants to give you shelter and keep you safe. And you often probably don't want to talk about trauma. And a lot of the reason is because you don't want to think about the distorted beliefs that you might be having. And, you know, trauma often creates distorted beliefs such as, I'm not safe, I'm powerless, God abandoned me, I'm broken. You know, these are things that just keeps getting repeated in our mind. It's very uncomfortable to think about these distorted beliefs. And we just want to push it to the side, but we want to talk about it. We want to see what is the truth, because all this distorted beliefs, I mean, exactly what it says. It's basically a lie. We're telling us a lie that, you know, that the trauma has caused us to believe. And so we need to see from the scriptures what it teaches us about truly who we are and what is the belief that we should have. And this is a part of, we need to renew our mind. We need to change the way we see things, our perspective that maybe we got from our traumas. And the healing involves slowly replacing trauma narratives with truth. So there's actually a book called Tell Yourself the Truth. This is a concept here. We need to let go of those lies and tell yourself the truth. And what's better than going to the Bible and hearing the truth? And so the biblical truth can really help us. And so let's practice. So maybe some trauma thoughts you might say is, I'm alone. No one cares about me. Well, Isaiah 41 verse 10 shows us that God is with us. God is with me, so I'm not alone. Another one you might say is, I'm weak. I went through this trauma. I let someone abuse me. I let this happen. I'm so weak. You know, there's no hope for me now. Well, the famous scripture, right? Philippians chapter 4 verse 13, God strengthens us. You know, God will strengthen me. We need to change that biblical truth. We are strong through God. And the other one, the very common one I hear a lot with traumas is, I'm abandoned. I'm abandoned. But Hebrews 13:5 says, God will never leave us. So we need to repeat these truths to us and to replace it with a lie. So one of the simple things that you could do is write down your distorted belief. Write down any belief that gets repeated in your mind and just put a line or like an arrow going to the right and say what is actual truth to that distorted belief. And you'll find that you could find every lie that you tell yourself, you could find a truth in the Bible. And this process actually aligns with the modern neuroscience. They report that this is basically what we call rebuilding your neural pathways in the brain. And this is the powerful thing about God has set up our brain to do, is we can rewire it. It's so awesome. We don't have to stick with these negative beliefs that we get. We can rewire our brain and to get rid of those negative thoughts, negative beliefs, but we gotta rewire it with something, which is the biblical truth. And so we need to meditate on these scriptures, and it can help to reshape our brain's response to fear. And this is a daily effort, guys. We can't just do this one time. We need to keep repeating. And this is why it is so recommended that you do read your Bible all throughout the day. But, maybe you're still beginning. You've never really studied the Bible before. The simple way to start is start your day in the morning with the scriptures, and then start your evening end your day with scriptures. Having a devotional time. We call it devotions. And if you don't know where to start, even you could just download a Bible app. You could get a devotional book at a Christian bookstore. There's so many ways to do this, but the most important thing is keep meditating on scriptures, keep finding out these truths, and that will help to replace these lies. And we need to let God take care of our fears that's been developed from our trauma, and we need to let Him deal with these things that's causing this distorted beliefs. And it really, because essentially what this fear from the trauma itself is doing is it's damaging our identity. People begin to see themselves as broken. They think they're damaged, they're worthless, and permanently changed. There's no hope for me. And I just want to throw out an example about this from the book of Ruth. There's a woman named Naomi. And this woman went through a lot. This woman lost her husband and her sons, and she's carrying this heavy burden, and she's going through grief. And if you know this story really well, the two sons were married, and she told those wives, "Hey, you don't have to stay with me. You could leave." But one of them, named Ruth, actually stays with Naomi, and she's dedicated to her and says, "I will go wherever you go." And so Naomi what happens is she ends up going back to her hometown with Ruth. And when she is going to her hometown, mind you, her name Naomi means pleasant. It's a nice name, pleasant. But in Ruth chapter 1, verse 20, it says, when Naomi was going back to her hometown and she was about to arrive, her people in the hometown saw her and said, "Oh, that's Naomi, that's Naomi." But in Ruth chapter 1, verse 20, it says, Naomi says, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me." You see, Naomi changed her name because it reflected how she felt inside. She was bitter about the trauma she experienced, and she has let the trauma reshape her identity, even to a point where changing her name. And her thoughts mirrored the distorted beliefs that trauma often plants in us, where I said earlier, I'm abandoned. My life is bitter. And yeah, sometimes you put it saying, God is against me. And by voicing this pain, she was basically experiencing a form of lament, which, means to express her sorrow, and acknowledging the depth of her suffering before God and her community. It was part of the journey through what we now recognize as a trauma recovery. We need to mourn, we need to grieve, we need to express. But it's interesting how sometimes we do let our trauma change our identity, and we want to be secured our identity in God. And 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 17 says, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. And so, we don't need to stay in this trauma, but in Christ, we could have identity. We are a child of God, and we can become new. We can be renewed through Christ. And so this doesn't not mean trauma disappears instantly, but it means that trauma does not have to define who you are. Your identity, you can choose to be rooted in Christ rather than what happened to you. And so we need to remember, let's have our identity in Christ, not in the trauma. And Psalms 34 verse 18 says, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. God sees our pain, and He is near, and even in the darkest moments. And God is trying to help us in many ways. And, there's so many stories out there in the Bible, but, one maybe we could talk about is Joseph in Genesis. He was betrayed by his own brothers. He was sold in slavery and later imprisoned unfairly, falsely accused. Yet God was with him through every trial. And he was brokenhearted. He was suffering, but he decided to see that God was close to him. And he, I believe, claimed, verses like Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 says, fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will hold you with righteous right hand. This verse really reassures us that God is there with us no matter what. Even if we went through trauma, God is still there, trying to help us to heal and to support us. And we, talking about Joseph, the end is beautiful, what he did. He forgave his brothers. And forgiveness is often something it's like the last ending healing process we have to go through. And that's probably another topic for another show. But forgiveness, I just want to show you through the Bible. It's often misunderstood that it doesn't mean that harm, that harm that was done to you was okay. That justice can be ignored, that, we're not just saying it's okay what happened to you, basically what I'm saying. But the forgiveness means releasing the burden. I'm not going to carry this hatred and bitterness anymore. And I believe that's what Joseph did. Joseph was like, I don't want this trauma to be my identity, to keep giving me distorted belief. So I believe in you, God. God, you could heal me, and I'm going to release it to you. I know you said you said to me, I'm willing to take your burden, so I'm going to release it to you. And Romans 12 verse 19, it's a pretty good one. It says, do not take revenge, but leave room for God's wrath. Don't worry about justice. God will take care of it. So it's not worth holding on to resentment, anger that you cannot handle. But who can handle it? God can handle it. And so releasing all that emotion, remember, expressing, letting it go to God will help you to heal. And so when you come back, we'll talk more about steps towards healing in our PTSD.
This is Be Renewed, the show for anyone ready to refresh their mind, heal relationships, and embrace life fully. There's more to come, so please stay tuned. We welcome your anonymous questions by phone, text, or WhatsApp at 671-686-9999.
Our day-to-day lives are affected so much by events of yesterday, last year, our childhood. The joys and pains of past moments carry over and often bring us either happiness or hurt today. Unfortunately, the painful parts have a way of sticking around. In those moments when the past threatens your present and you're uncertain about the future, God is the same through it all. Let Him in. He's very good at moving things forward. Joy FM, family-friendly radio.
You're tuned in to Be Renewed, where faith, practical wisdom, and mental wellness meet. We welcome your questions by phone, text, or WhatsApp at 671-686-9999. We will not use your name for any question you submit. Here's your host, Shion Shironishi.
All right, so we just talked about forgiveness and how that is one of the process to healing from your past trauma. And sometimes there's a lot of misunderstanding. And so maybe in the future show, we're going to talk about forgiveness. But I just want to share something, and along with the story of Joseph and how Joseph was able to forgive his brothers, I also experienced forgiveness, and I forgave my father. You know, some of you guys heard my story in the past where my father left myself and my family. We were living in California at that time, and when I was 9 years old, and he went to Japan without telling us. And that really left a scar. It was a trauma for me, and that led me to a lot of mental health struggles. But what the biggest emotion that came out of it was anger and resentment and frustration towards my father. And that I realized that caused a lot of relationship issues, especially romantically, and it didn't take me to anywhere good. And even I got into addictions because of those emotions. And when God took me through the process of healing through counseling and through other things I was learning from the Bible, I was convicted, to really release it. I was releasing it little by little to God, expressing it, letting it go. But I really realized that God was wanting me to forgive my father. And so during that time, I couldn't go to Japan to see him face to face. So I actually ended up calling him, and we talked on the phone, and it was hard. It wasn't easy, but God gave me the strength. And I said, I want to forgive you, but I also want you to forgive me. And that was a weird thing I said. It's like, whoa, why am I saying that? Because he's the one that hurt me. But I really didn't want to have the anger towards him. I know I had bad thoughts towards him. I've spoken badly about him. And I did ask him for forgiveness also. And it was a weird thing. And when God really takes over your life, He really changes you. He really helps you to let go of the anger and even brings humility into your heart. And I asked him for forgiveness, and my dad was shocked that I even said that. And he said, I should be asking you for forgiveness, not you. But he really said, I'm sorry. I really want you to forgive me for what I've done to you and your mother and your sisters. And I really felt at peace after that. I felt something that was really, really just holding me back was just released. It's like a chain that was cut off. And it really helped me even more to have a better relationship with my, at that time, my girlfriend, and then eventually my fiance, and now my wife now. And it really changed the dynamic of our relationship. And so don't let these traumas hold you back. I know that every single one of us have different things. Again, combat, maybe natural disasters, car accident, witnessing something. It's tragic, and God never intended these bad things to happen to us, but this is the world that we're living in, and God is trying to help us to navigate. And when we experience these things, we just need to keep our eyes on God. God's the only one that can help us, and like the way He helped me, He can help you also. And the biggest thing to do is we need to follow certain stages. And some of the professionals out there, experts, always share these stages that PTSD patients should go through. And it's often given to people to help them to understand because, often the question they ask is, so how do we move from trauma toward healing? And so here are some practical steps that maybe you could take in. And this is from a book called Trauma and Recovery. And it explains that there are 3 main stages that you should go through towards healing. Stage 1 is safety. First, you need to establish physical and emotional safety. And you can't heal while you're still in a danger zone, and we need to establish safety. So what does this look like? If you are, for example, I'm trying to think of maybe, this is often something that comes up with most of my patients. So they'll come to me experiencing PTSD symptoms, and let's just say a veteran that went through a combat and was in a combat zone and they got PTSD from that. And they come to me saying they have these symptoms. And I ask them questions like, hey, what is your home life like? What's your work life like? And maybe they might tell me, I have a hostile situation at work. My supervisor really gets on my case. He bullies me. And my coworker tells, lies about me and gossips about me. And I just feel always on edge. I say, if you really want to heal from PTSD, you may need to change work and job, and you might have to switch to another job. Because if you stay in a hostile situation and try to work on PTSD, it may not work. You might keep having triggers from that workplace. And so that might be an example where we need to find safety. We need to have safety. And some of you, maybe you had trauma, but maybe you're still in that abusive relationship. You need to leave that relationship. You cannot work on PTSD if you are still in an abusive relationship. And so these are some things to consider. How can I help my brain and my body to feel safe, to get out of those environment? And stage 2, remember to express and to mourn. You need to acknowledge the trauma you had and process those emotions that's connected to it. And so often, especially this is found in men, they come to me and they talk about, okay, I have these PTSD symptoms. And I could tell they're not expressing their emotions. And I tell them, hey, tell me, how does this trauma, how did it make you feel? How is it making you feel today? What's inside of you? And obviously it takes a few or many sessions to get to a point where they actually finally acknowledge that the trauma did affect them, and they start expressing their emotions, specifically crying. And you just see instant relief when they start expressing their emotion. And so that's important, stage 2. And then stage 3 is reconnection. You need to build trust again in yourself, others, and the world. But the biggest trust, I would say, is God. When we're having PTSD, this trauma that caused it, we associate with, I can't trust anybody. That's something that you find often with PTSD patients. Not everyone, but majority of the people. And I often feel that even if you do trust someone, it might just be one person. And you're like, I don't trust anyone else. And that is very unhealthy. We need to reconnect. We need to trust. And so what does that entail? Being part of a community. Being part of like a church community. I mean, that's what I encourage the most, is being part of a family type of community that will encourage you, that will pray for you, and that will support you. And so those 3 stages are very helpful. Again, stage 1, make sure you find safety. You create a safe environment. Stage 2, express your emotions, especially to someone that you could trust. I said earlier, a professional, a therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist. And then stage 3, reconnect. Build that community, connect and rebuild trust in people. and specifically God. I really want to emphasize that. Reconnect with God. Build that relationship. And some other things that I really do encourage is, make sure that you could have a professional support system. So I mentioned therapists, but there's also maybe where you are, there's a support group, group counseling. A lot of the veterans do have a group meetups that supports each other. And there's places where you could go to, find healing. And I really want to emphasize this one, though, is small, consistent steps. Don't try to go all the way and be like, okay, I'm going to just heal from this. PTSD is very, very, you got to carefully approach the healing, because if you go way too fast, you might be exposing yourself to things that you're not ready for. And so you want to gradually take some of these steps that I'm mentioning. So don't go full throttle. Take slow steps and you will get there. People think, no, I got to get it done right now. I got to rush it through. But just think about this. As long as you're taking steps, you're going to get to that final destination. And so all it takes is small steps and being consistent. That's another good word to say. It's be consistent with some of these things that I'm teaching, whether that's grounding technique or the stages of recovery, or seeking God and reading the Bible and repeating the scriptures to help combat those distorted beliefs. We gotta be consistent, daily efforts, and you will get there. You will get there, because I know I've been there, and those steps are great, and it's gonna take you to a place where you never thought you could get to. And so I really hope that today's talk has brought some hope in you, and that if you are experiencing PTSD, there is a way to recover and there is a way to heal. And I've seen many of my patients recover. Now, there are moments, I'm just going to say, that medication management might be needed. I do that myself, or I help people with prescribing medication because sometimes their symptoms is way too much. We need these help sometimes. We need professional help. And so don't do this on your own. You could come and seek help. Obviously, I work at the Guam SDA clinic, so you could come and seek help for my help there. And so, just be open to these things I'm sharing with you today. And I just want to, tell you that you don't have to carry this weight on your own from the trauma. You have people that's willing to support and help you. And so remember some of these things that we talked about today. This show exists to help you. And we want to help you renew your mind, your heart, your spirit. So we thank you so much for joining us and joining us today on this Be Renewed show. I just want to encourage you to keep your eyes on God. God is near and close to you, and He can bring healing to you. So take care of yourself, take steps toward healing, and remember, you can be renewed today. Thank you.
That's it for today's Be Renewed. Remember, this show offers guidance and inspiration, not professional mental health care. If you need help, please consult a licensed professional. Thanks for listening, and please join us again next week at this same time.